Hello. There's a real double-sided sword, double-edged sword to the topic of the red flags. And do you discuss them with people? Do you keep them to yourself? Do you share them with people? Do you admit them to yourself? There's a lot that we go through when we see the red flags. I have jokingly said I stomped on a bunch of mine that I saw, ignored them, never brought them to light, didn't admit them to myself, let alone to somebody else. And the reason that we hide them, we know why we hide them. Of course, we know why we hide them. Red flags or not, whether you're in a relationship with somebody and something not great happens, we're not always running to tell family, friends, confidants, because, of course, the old thing of you want them to see your person in a certain way. And once you shed light onto something that's unpleasant, then your loved ones are going to view them differently, see them through a different lens, be on the lookout for other things. You know it, they know it, the narcissist would know it. When you are continually squashing the red flags of your narcissist, and the way that you can know, if you're like, well, I don't know what a red flag is, if you're not telling, if you can't, not that we're not obligated to tell people everything about our relationships, that's not what I mean. But if there's something that you purposefully wouldn't tell somebody, wouldn't want them to know that he's doing to you or saying to you or treating you a certain way, and you would be embarrassed for somebody to know, you would be mortified if somebody, that's a red flag. That feeling you get that you know this is bad, and if I told friends and family, they would absolutely tell me I'm out of my mind for staying with this person. And so that's another reason why you don't say it, because when you are telling people anything about a relationship that you're in, you're effectively soliciting opinions. Even if you just want somebody to listen, I know people like that. They don't want you to say anything. They want you to listen and don't say anything. That's fine. I know I've been in that situation too. You just want to vent. Don't fix me. Just vent. Hear me out. Live it. That's fine too. But when you are purposefully knowing inside of you that there are things that you couldn't and wouldn't want anyone to know about what you're going through, because you wouldn't want to hear their opinions on it, so you keep them secret so as to not solicit opinions, because that's natural. People are going to try. That's a real big sign to yourself for you to look inward and at yourself and your relationship if you haven't already. We talk a lot on this channel because I like to foster the environment of self-evolution. So we talk a lot about that, right? Doing work on yourself or whatever. If you see that there are repeatedly things that are happening in your relationship and you don't bring them to light, and you just sweep, not because you're not sharing your business, but because you're doing it on purpose so nobody sees your business. There's a difference, right? You, like I said, you can be the person that doesn't share every little thing, but are there things about your relationship that if people did find out, you'd be mortified? That's a red flag. And you should pay it more mind than what you may be doing. Because if not, then that's your red flag to yourself that you need to look at it, right? That is in of itself a red flag if you're ignoring these different things. And you can tell when you don't want to tell anybody else. And there's a risk when you share. There's a risk when you share. And I'm not saying you need to run to people and tell them everything about your narcissist to release yourself. But it is a good turning point if you are serious about trying to get away from your narcissist. They'll carry you and push you through a little bit. Their reactions, you saying it out loud, you admitting what happened, will maybe hit you in the face. And maybe getting a certain reaction from a person you respect, or maybe they'll say just the right thing and make you realize how astonishing it is that you did hide what they did or said to you. Sometimes we need that. But then you feel bad if they're there for you and then you go back to your narcissist. Now you got to explain to them you went back. And they're not going to understand why you went back. There's a lot of sides to it. And People naturally want to help, they naturally want to give advice. And so we choose to keep things secret because we don't want to hear what they have to say on it. Then listen to yourself. Talk to yourself. Talk to yourself. And you know what you would say to yourself. I do it with my grandfather. I'm not kidding. We lost him. He's not been here for a while now. But I'll talk to him, and I hear his voice. I know exactly what he'd say to me about anything going on in my life. I know how he'd say it. So do it to yourself. If you don't want to share yet and you're not ready to hear it, separate yourself from yourself and try to tell yourself what you're putting up with. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell yourself as a young 13-year-old girl who has dreams of one day being in love and getting married? What would you tell the younger version of yourself about life and what you should put up with? What should you tell yourself about, what would you tell yourself about how to handle things as they come at, like, it just makes me so sad that we can't see for ourselves, independent of even going to anybody else, how much harm is coming our way and how much we're hiding it. And the reason I said picture yourself as a 13-year-old girl is because, or boy, I think we're like innocent then. We see love like it's going to be nice and we're going to find nice. It's going to be nice. So if that positive Renee were an adult looking at me, what would they say that I chose to put up with this behavior? That wasn't our agreement, old Renee. If my 13-year-old came and talked to me. That's not what we had envisioned. That's not what we dreamt of. The red flags are your red flags that there are red flags. And I hate to say it like that, but I'm trying to really bring it home because they are ignored. Those are the whispers. Those are the signs. Those are the things that you should be paying attention to. We skip them and we think about the good. We squash the bad. No. The bad things that are starting to happen, let them rise to the top and pay them proper mind. Look, I get a little fervent. I really do. And I get it, because if you express disgust in your partner, it's going to be very hard for your people to re-accept them. In that situation, you got to let your people know that you're learning, or if they come on strong and they're like, how could you have put up with that? Let them know you're learning, that it's a disorder, that, it forces you to discuss it a little bit. It does, to say it out loud, and that can help them understand, but I don't know that they fully will. And you don't have to go into a 12-minute dissertation, just... the very simple sentence that I've come upon is, I've learned that there's a disorder, that there are people that are on the earth and their goal is to bring harm to you. And they come in through luring you in and then squishing you. It's pretty much like a 30-second commercial. Like, I give it, if they want to look it up after that, that's fine. But I was like, there are people on earth whose aim is to hurt you and they go through life dysfunctionally. And sometimes I say what it's called, sometimes I don't. But I just have a very concise, I might not even say what it's called. And I'll just say, oh, he turned out to be pretty dysfunctional and he lives a duplicitous life. You could say that too. Like, you don't have to explain the disorder. But once you start talking about the things that have happened to you and the specifics of it, and now your friends are aware of these red flags, yes, you are going to hear it from them. And that's rightfully so. And maybe it'll wake you up quickly, and maybe you need to hear it from them. Maybe you need to say it out loud and see if you can even get the words out without being mortified. I can hardly speak of the specifics of what happened to me. I can hardly even verbalize it to another person, like out loud, the very specifics of it. I got it all written down. I've written hundreds and hundreds and thousands of words on it. But to actually sit and say, it doesn't matter, I processed it myself without having to do that. But, my God, it's mortifying. I'm mortified. And that's not why I won't bring it up, that I'm embarrassed. I'm proud of what I've learned. It's just, it's so clear to me, and I'm just, one day I guess it'll all unravel, but it wasn't important to me to talk about the details with anybody. I was on to him already. So I'm not the type to rehash the people, and I don't, you know what I mean? So, whatever. You see one, you're seeing them. The next time you see your friends, you're not seeing that person. You come up with a 30-second commercial. You don't need to relive it every single time. It's a huge thing to you. It is. But it's not ever going to be understood as a huge thing to the other people, especially once you start sharing your red flags, because they were going to regard it as something that wasn't real to begin with, because nobody that has any real feelings for you would treat you the way that the red flags show they treat you. That's why your friend, it's more information too for your friend. They're like, oh my God. So not only don't they like them maybe already, but now you're telling them these things. Listen to them. Heed their advice. You chose them as your friend for a reason. And they just want to support you. I mentioned it once before. My fairy godmother, my favorite human on earth, she has a saying she's been saying for decades. You love them, we love them. You hate them, we hate them. Now, that just is a testament of her loyalty to her people, is where that comes from. Meaning, I'm on your side. Whatever you want is how she comes to people. But there's truth to that. The key is, if you have a back and forth and you are outward with your red flags to your friends, and now you're having a relapse and you're going back in, you can't apply if you love them, we love them, if you hate them, we hate them right here, because you're not going back because you still love this person. There's no way you can love this person if they're doing all these red flags to you. It's an impossibility. Oh, but I do. You don't understand how he makes me feel. We romanticize love, don't we? We romanticize it to trick ourselves into thinking it's some chemical thing in the brain. And there is chemistry. Sure, you look at people across a room, boom. You know what I mean? That happens, of course. But there's a lot more to love than just that initial chemistry. So if they are behaving in a way with all these red flags that do not reflect loyalty and honesty and goodness and empathy and caring for your feelings and looking out for you and not harming you, then none of what they're doing is love. So none of what you're feeling is love. There's no way. This is impossible for you to love this. And it took me forever. But I love, you think you love them. Do you love them? Or did you get used to loving them? That song I love, Louis Capaldi. You're getting kind of used to being someone you love. You get used to it. The idea of it. Now it's gone. You don't want to admit that all of a sudden, that you're on an island in life by yourself, untethered. No one loves me. I don't love anyone. What do you mean it's gone? It can be jarring, so you try to hang on to it. So you might have some back and forth. We have to be understanding of our friends, I think, if they get a little questioning if that were to happen. You have to put yourself in their shoes and think about everything they just learned. I'm not trying to discourage you from sharing your red flags, and I'm not trying to encourage you. That is a personal choice. I'm trying to inform you that there are all these things to think about when making that choice. Sharing your red flags, and some people just don't like to talk about their business. When you say the things that they do out loud to somebody else, and like I said, I didn't get into detail, but I said enough I have a friend or two that I said enough that I had it on and I didn't even like what I even had to say without even getting into details. I guess that's why I never got into details. I got snapped into reality right away. Like if there are 5 sentences to explain each incident, sentence 1 is already so disgusting that I didn't need to say sentences 2 through 5, I guess is what I'm saying. The highlights of what happened were so horrific, I didn't have to go into the details. And you might think the same way. That's something to look at, a pattern of behavior wherein you are embarrassed and mortified and it keeps happening. You can't just keep hiding it. You can't hide it, even if you don't ever say it, but you just leave the person. But you cannot exist in a toxic environment and keep it secret. That is like a double whammy of toxicity. You're not releasing it. You just keep accepting it. You're isolated, alone on an island. There's no one that you can turn to except the person who's inflicting it. So I want you to look at all that. It's a big topic, whether or not you share, and there are things to consider. But we're after our own mental health. And if you feel that keeping it inside is the best for your mental health, I'd be curious to know why, is all. So anyway, that's my red flag talk for today.